Welcome to Uptown Rumble, heavy music in the Bronx. My name is Steven Payne, director of the Bronx County Historical Society. Today is February 11th, 2024, and I'm here with Cold Sweat, a legendary punk metal outfit from the Bronx, and excited to learn more about the band's history and record it through an oral history. So we'll start off by asking each of the members who are here today to just introduce themselves very briefly, the name, position or positions in Cold Sweat, and then we'll take it back to family history and background from there. So Keith, do you want to start, and then Russ, and then Mike after that?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Okay, no problem. All right, so I guess I start. I'm Keith Haase. I'm the original guitar player of the band. I started as a rhythm guitar player until the Natures of Wonders directed me towards lead guitar, and I became the only guitarist in the band. Now, I've been playing since I was 13, but unfortunately didn't have my own guitar until I was 16, so that made things kind of weird learning how to play. Anyway, I played in many different bands since then, but nothing gigantic or anything. But the best bands I played in were cover bands because they actually made me money.
That's right.
If I give advice to anybody that's going to hear this, an original band is extremely difficult. You really have to know somebody in the industry. I highly recommend it. That's it really been about me. My family had no musical history. I was the first one in my family to play music. My father was dead set against it. Sounds familiar to a lot of people, I'm sure.
That's familiar.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll get more into that in a second. Keith, Russ, do you want to just say a sentence or two about yourself?
Yeah. I'm Russ Mate, and I was one of the founders of Cold Sweat. And I started out playing drums, and I ended up playing keyboards, and that's pretty much it.
All right, thank you, Russ and Mike.
Come on.
Oh, we're going to go back and get into a lot more. Don't worry.
Wait till Mike gets going. So Mike, stop.
Oh yeah, forget
it. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, my name today is Drummer Bear. It used to be Mike Fass, and but I started playing drums. I was the last drummer for Cold Sweat. I'll tell you how that started. But my drum days actually go all the way back to about I'd say 1962. 63.
Wow.
There's a great record called Have Twangy Guitar Will Travel by Dwayne Eddy and the Rebels. And for some reason, that was the first rock and roll record that ever really turned me on. And as a little boy, I was banging on the floor, And so my mom thought that's kind of crazy for her apartment. So she brought out a pair of pencils and a sherbet container, an empty sherbet container, and she said you can play on that. And she did say years later, she says I was kind of amazed that even at you're only like 4 years old, that you actually could keep a beat. Apparently I had a natural born sense of rhythm. I was just banging away. I was actually going along to the music, even at 4.
Wow. Well, can't wait to hear a lot more about your musical development, Mike. And before we get into that, let's just hear a little bit about each of your family history and background. Keith and Russ, I think from what I understand, you both grew up in the Bronx. Mike, I think you grew up in Brooklyn. So if Keith, if you want to start off by talking about your family history and background and how they ended up in the Bronx, whatever you might know about it, and then we can go to Russ, and then we can go to Mike with Brooklyn.
All right. Well, for me, my family was always in the Bronx. We were in Highbridge at first. Then
okay.
I went over. Yeah, I went over to the other side. Because Highbridge was actually going downhill, and almost literally. We moved into co-op. It wasn't even finished when I got there. It was like the biggest sandlot a kid could have,
Wow. So what, 1969, is that when your family moved?
1969. Yeah, I was going to be 9 that year. Being born late in the year, my birthday came in November, so lucky me. All the kids were already older than me, and they, when were you born? It doesn't matter. Anyway, so it's really, like I said, I wasn't playing guitar until about 13. I started in school, and I needed a school guitar. They let me take it home once in a while, but it's acoustic, and that's all I knew was acoustic. When I got to electric, it was a different animal. I wasn't really sure how to get that heavy sound like everybody else got until somebody at the music store said, "This is what you got to do." And he showed me an amp that did it, and also a few boxes that would give me the same sound. But, like I said, my family was like, I might have had a grandfather who played mandolin, supposedly. I don't know. All I know is that I came home one day and showed my father a Kiss album. He's like, "Get that shit out of my house." I was like, Kiss. It was Kiss Destroyer, and a friend of mine gave me Kiss Alive. But then I was introduced to a whole bunch of other bands, and everybody kept telling me to do covers. But no, I wanted to be an original musician. And, yeah.
So Keith, what kind? Would your family listen to any music in the house at all while you were growing up before you started getting into, Kiss and all the other?
My parents listened to the big band stuff, like Herb Alpert and Team on the Brass. I love that. What's it called? Whipped Cream and Dreams or something like that. Yeah, that's one of my favorite albums, and I really liked Herb Alpert. I never understood. I tried trumpet as a kid in high school. In grade school, and I didn't like it. My lips out. I said, I don't like that feeling. But anyway, and basically my mom, Montevani, all that stuff, and I was like, I don't like that stuff. Yeah.
And what'd your parents do for a living?
My father worked for the Singer Corporation. He was the import-export clerk. And we got all kinds of goodies from them. And in fact, my first stereo was a suitcase package where the speakers broke, but the turntable was a Girard turntable. So I said, I know exactly what this is. I'm going to take this, and I put a receiver to it. These big speakers I found, I think they were my sister's, and she didn't want them. So I hooked them up, and I had the loudest stereo in the house. I had a 200 watt Marantz receiver. So if you know Marantz, they don't kid around. Even back then, they're still popular these days.
Wow. And so you. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, everybody liked hearing my stereo. Me, Warren, one of our friends, we'd have the tennis rackets, tending to play to the songs, and we'd be blasting Ted Nugent, Gonzo Live. My neighbors upstairs would call and say, "You have to play it so loud. It's the only way I know how."
What section?
I was in section 1. It's actually a rock that was on Baychester Avenue called Pygmy's Hump, and I found out about that from your museum, actually, so I know where your museum is.
Oh, yeah.
Me and my mom, my mom brought me in there. I'm like, what the hell are you doing here? And we learned about Pygmy's Hump. It's right on the corner of Donaldsbury and Baychester. It's a bus stop, too. So, and I used to play on that thing all the time.
I bet, it's a good place to play for kids. I mean,
you get your bike up at the top, let it go freewheeling. Don't hit the wrong bumper. You go head over heels, man. And I've done that.
So what junior high school did you go to when you started playing acoustic? I don't think were they open? Were the ones in Co-op City open yet, or you had to go further away?
I didn't go to Truman. I just went to 181 6th grade. And then the teachers and principal of the school said I should go to a school for advanced education. And so I went to school in Queens. It's from 7th grade to time out. And then I had to do the thing where you get a GED and a certificate of completion because they were ungraded. And I went to school with a bunch of eggheads. basically. They were all on the
I
kids.
see.
Thank God. Yeah. And the school also did special ed, which they're actually, those people were pretty cool. I don't know what they were there for special ed. They looked like normal people to me. You know, they basically, hey, try this stuff. I was like, oh, wow, what's this? You know, yeah. So,
I see. So some of your friends at that high school were the ones who gave you the Kiss album then?
No, I actually, my friend who lived upstairs, I knew him since he was 6, and I was 8 when I met him. And he gave me Kiss Alive. I went out and bought Destroyer. And from there, it all went from there. Then I had Aerosmith, Zeppelin, because all the kids in school, and it was mostly the kids in the special ed classes. They were older. They were teenagers. They were anything 13 and up. You know, that people. I think it was more like those kids had problems at home and stuff like that, and they couldn't handle the curriculum at school. But, you know, the school did give me a job. I was an assistant teacher. I was like, it was basically I went and got lunch with the kids. That was my job, and help them with the problems that they had with whatever, you know. But it was only about a half year, school year, and then from there I was like, well, now what? And so then I took the easiest job I could find, which is a messenger job. I was able to make my own hours. I even bought my first guitar, which I wish I still had. And
what kind of guitar was that?
It was a Guild X79. It's called a Skyhawk. The body looked like a bird in flight, and it had a Guild. The headstock looked like the old headstock. It was a salesman's model. I had no idea until I found out later. Yeah, it's I could find it on a resale for about $1,000. I picked mine up in Terminal Music on 48th Street. It was like $3.99. I thought it was a BC Rich. The headstock looked kind of similar to a BC Rich. So I did a layaway plan, which every music store hates, because he's not coming back. No, I did. I was broke every time, but I got the guitar.
Were there any music stores in the Bronx or Lower Westchester County that you went to?
I didn't go to Westchester too much, but I did go to Plumber Academy of Music. It's basically I went for lessons on how to play guitar. Basically learned, all right, well, how do I do this right now, tuning and stuff like that. And this guy Butchie there showed me everything how to do. Butch was a good guy, but he's a little on the uppity side.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. He liked my
skills. I just throw in something. I think he became one of the greatest lead guitarists ever. And I've worked with a lot of them. Yeah. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I'm not Steve Vai, but yeah. I mean, at the time I was playing, due to a certain injury to my right arm, I couldn't play guitar anymore since 2006. So I had to develop my own studio. I have a recording studio and whatnot up in New York. I had a recording studio in my living room. But the DJ down the hall, he hooked me up with a DAW system. I was like, oh, this is great. And then he passed away, and I got all his customers. But all his customers were hip-hop and rap. So that's what I was recording. The Money's Money.
That's
before
right.
I moved down to Florida 5 years ago, I made close to $10,000 recording stuff I couldn't stand to listen to. But that's the price of making money. And I still have recording and everything. I play keyboards with one hand, which is extremely difficult. And
I bet.
And I have my own setup. I do it just for me now. I'm in a tiny little room now. Russ Casale, it's a tiny little room. He's been here. He's seen it.
Yeah.
I have one more story. About Keith. We were at one of Russ and Laura's barbecues one time, and Keith, he couldn't use his right hand anymore, but he was fingering the key. Yeah.
I did it with one hand. Yeah. I played better than
you did with one hand, and you were just and I couldn't believe how good you still were with one hand.
It's like riding a bike, Mike. You don't forget, and if you fall off the horse, you get back on and ride again. I still have an electric guitar.
I guess you do,
Yeah, I do. It's an Ibanez. It's a cheapo, but why should I pay $1,000 guitar when
Keith, do you remember what are some of the first songs you learned on electric specifically?
I actually learned a few Ted Nugent songs, basically from his first album, Derek St. Holmes. Hey Babe was one of them. It's a nice boogie pattern song. And a lot of his songs on that album. I learned one song from David Gilmour's solo album called Mahalis. It's an instrumental, basically, it came out in '78. A friend of mine, a drummer I was jamming with at the time, said, "Hey, listen to this, man. It's David doing his own stuff." I was like, "What?" And you figure David Gilmour, he's always a Floyd, but even back then, in those days, him and Mortis still had an edge between them. From what I understand.
And as far as at that time when you were learning and developing as a guitarist, who were some of the most influential guitarists that you'd listen to?
Mostly, actually, I like Jimmy Page, and so later on, I'm sick and tired of Zeppelin. Every time I turn around, it's like, a Stairway to Heaven. What, again? This guy around the neighborhood kept playing this song. It's Frankie, not Stairway to Heaven. Come on, it's not. Don't you know anything else? And then I started getting into Aerosmith, Priest, and Boston, and I started listening to Al Di Meola too, from a drummer I knew also. He was a fusion drummer, and he said, "You got to check out Di Meola." Okay. And I tried learning Land of the what's that? I forget, Land of the Rising Sun or something like that. But it's a very difficult song. I was like, wow. Because my songs basically had 3 parts if I was lucky. I didn't really want to have too much. I don't want to make it too busy. I wanted people to enjoy the rhythm and structure of the song. That's why if you listen to Chain Your Mind, that's one of my best constructions of the song. I just wish the singer was better. You probably check that song out on our website that we have. We have that song.
Yep. That's right.
We found a real singer, and he was like a Ronnie James Dio kind of guy. He could really sing, let's see what else.
So we're gonna get a lot more into further aspects of your development, Keith. But Russ, let's start with you.
Before you do that.
Oh yeah, sure.
Before you do that, Steve. Yeah, how I really did learn, I learned by asking questions. I see a guy playing. Hey, how do you do that? Yeah, show me how to do that. And I was like, it's the best way to learn how to write, because I don't read. I don't write music down. It's all in my head. And
it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. I mean, it's rock and roll, not Bach.
Yeah.
Who am I, Mozart? I'm going to write it all down. No thanks. Look what happened to him.
That's right.
He was dead at 38.
That's right. Now, actually, just reminded me of another potential question for you, Keith, before we move on to Russ. Were there other kids your age who were playing guitar? I mean, I know you eventually got up with Russ and other people from Co-op City, but
almost everybody in Co-op played guitar. As I'm still friends with one guy.
That's what I figured.
I was 16 when I met him. He showed me a lot of stuff also. But he was one of those finicky guitar players. Is that still out of tune? So I said, no, it's not. You're fine. And back in those days, we didn't have electronic tuners. We had tuning forks in our ears. I like to tell kids today, how do you tune with this? So banging on one, no way. Pick up vibrations,
And you alluded to this a little bit already, but what did your parents think of the kind of music that you were listening to and playing?
Well, my mother was into it. She got me my first guitar. This guy, a singer, a songwriter, Steve Forbett, he actually picked it out for her. She was friends with him. I don't know if you remember Steve Forbett. He had a short career, got signed by CBS, and got dragged over the coals. Me, Russ, and my ex-girlfriend went to see him at the Lone Star one time. As is after we did a tape with the real singer. But he couldn't come across as anything.
Okay.
You win, you lose.
Oh, and And where would you go to, like, buy albums? Would you go down to Manhattan to buy albums, or were there stores in the Bronx that you go to?
Well, basically, we had a Jimmy's Music World in Shopping Center, too. I'd go there. And if they didn't have anything, just tell them, and they order it, and they let you know when it's in. And also, I since when I started working in Manhattan, I'd go, Tower Records,
Sure.
If they were still around. They were on 5th Avenue, 42nd Street, actually. That's where I'd go.
Yeah.
And either that or sometimes I go into Bleecker Bob. That's where I find all the old ones. And,
of course, Bleecker Bob.
That's where I came across Pink Floyd and Montgomery. That came out in '69. And I'm listening to it, I said, this is Floyd? Sounds nothing like Money or anything like that, those songs. Because those songs are like, basically was so shortly after the what's his name, Sid Barrett days. Because Sid Barrett popped his mind and got, so what was that?
I think
that might be Warren.
It might be.
Hey, welcome to Warren.
Hey there. Ever elusive Warren.
Hey, Warren.
Hey, Warren.
How's it going, fella?
Hey,
good. How are you doing?
Doing okay.
Great. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, sorry I'm late. I'm at a gathering for the Super Bowl, and they just started. They just before I was about to make the call, they started serving dinner, and I wasn't about to miss that. So.
That's right. Well, we're just on some of Keith's early years, so we'll get to you in a second too, Warren. But it's good. You haven't really missed much of your own stuff anyway. So
okay. You missed my story, Warren. That should save you a lot of trouble. So.
But yeah, Keith is before we get to playing with other people and all of that, are there other things you'd like to add about getting into rock and roll more? Like, for instance, would you go and see shows anywhere before you started performing with other people?
Oh yeah,
well,
I was performing. A lot of shows.
I was performing.
Ahead,
actually, I was in a band before I saw anybody. I think the first band I saw, this was back in 1980. I saw at the Garden. I saw Ted Nugent at the Madison Square Garden and AC/DC open for me. And
I was 79, though. Yeah, 79.
Really? 79?
1979. 79. Yeah, I was one of Bon Scott's last performances. Yeah, but
it was. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a couple of shows after that, he died of I think alcohol poisoning. Warren, can you find Warren, can you find a quieter place? I hear everybody in the background.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Let me.
I like that guy's coming in the closet.
Hopefully this is better.
I think it might be. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. I think it is. All right. So I guess we'll go ahead and go on to Russ for now. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Might as well get everybody else in there. You got all. I have all that. I can go on for days. There's Warren. He'll tell you.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get more into things for sure. But Russ, do you want to say a little bit about your family history and background, and then we'll take it kind of to more or less the same kind of point in your life as Keith. So we'll start with your family history and background, then we'll move forward a little bit before we move on to the other guys.
Yeah, that's good.
He's got a fascinating background.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
Okay. No, I don't. Anyway, I was born in Brooklyn and lived there until I was 5. Then my family moved to Queens, and I lived there in Queens until I was 12, at which point we moved to the Bronx, to Co-op City.
Oh, where in Queens did you live?
I lived in Rockdale Village, which is in Jamaica, Queens.
Oh, so I see. So you're already living in a co-op then?
Yeah.
And then your family moved to Co-op City.
Yep.
I see.
And when I was in elementary school, that's pretty much, I guess, where my first introduction to music occurred. And I was in music class there. And I played the trumpet. And much like Keith, I didn't like playing it. Didn't like anything about it really. And to be honest,
I hear you there.
I wasn't really too good at it. Another notable thing about the class I was in happened to be someone who attained bigger musical heights than myself, actually. Marcus Miller. Anybody?
Oh, okay.
He was in my elementary school class, music class. And
wow.
Let's see. So I moved to the Bronx, and I really didn't get into music until I was about 19. I should mention when I was in Queens, I took piano lessons at the age of 9 for about, I want to say maybe a year, and that just I didn't really keep up with that until I got into music again. After but I listened to a lot of music when I was in my teens, but like I said, I didn't play. But I listened.
Okay, what all were you listening to in your teens?
All kinds of music. Anything from mostly my favorite stuff was progressive rock and also hard rock and metal. That was the majority. Although my influences, I think they're quite varied probably. All kinds of rock music, everything.
Sure.
I do come from somewhat of a musical family. My mom played piano, and actually that's some of my first influence was listening to her playing piano at home. So that's where I think a lot of my influence. Also, of course, listening to to radio, AM radio, when I was a kid, and I guess most of it, like I said, the majority of my teen years was spent really listening to music as opposed to playing it. Then when I was 19, I met Rich, and who was actually one of the members of the band. That's a whole other story, which I guess we'll go into as a group.
There's a bunch of stories.
I want to thank Steven for
the car wreck is a story. Yeah.
Yeah, Steven asked me at the beginning before we were recording, if Rich was going to be joining us, and I told him, well, we'll have to hear the rest of the story before I can say anything about that.
Sure.
Yeah. So at that time, he was playing guitar, and I started playing the piano that was at my parents' house. And at that time I thought, playing in a band would be a pretty cool thing, and started, playing a little bit with that. And then when we got together to actually play, I believe that was with me, Rick, and Warren first. And we actually ended up needing a drummer. And, I was the drummer.
Had you played drums before that point?
The only time what happened was I had been jamming with a bunch of guys, also from co-op a couple of times, and Keith was there too. And I just for the hell of it, I asked the drummer at the time if he would mind if I played on the kit. And, he said, do you know how to play? I said, no. He said, okay, go ahead. So I did, I just hit the drums and acted like I could play, and actually I thought to myself, I actually can play this a little bit. And that, after that, I didn't get to actually play. I think it was about another year after that. And then, I ended up playing because we couldn't find anybody else to play drums. Actually, we did. I'm sorry. And I will leave that person's name not mentioned for the time being, unless anybody else wants to bring up his name. And he was playing in one of the bands that preceded Cold Sweat. And the best way I could say it, things just didn't work out. And I ended up taking over that role in the band.
Yeah, those were the days at Bronx Connection, that studio by 80 cabs. The worst studio you could ever imagine, but what do we know? We're just starting out,
Yeah. Anyway,
sure.
To continue with some of the same answers and questions and answers that Keith was talking about. My sister is a really good singer, and so that's another musical person in the family.
I see.
Yeah.
And which high school did you go to, Russ?
I made appearances at Harry S. Truman High School.
That's a good way to put it.
That's the best way to put it because that's the fact.
Yeah.
I went to, before Truman, I went to junior high school 135, which was by the
You took the long way to success.
What's that?
You took the long way to success.
Yeah, very long way.
I mean, considering you have your own business now, who would have thunk it?
Yeah, well, I did. That's anyway. So.
And
yeah.
Were the people that you were hanging out with, were they also into the same kind of music that you were into at that time?
Yeah, but that's before I actually started playing. But yeah, I mean during my high school years, everybody listened to pretty much the same groups and artists, that Keith was mentioning, Ted Nugent, Aerosmith, on the progressive.
You listen to what your friends listen to. You say, hey, check this out, man.
Yeah.
Not like today, we just go on YouTube. Hey, who's this?
Yeah. Well,
Discovery
was a whole different thing. Discovery was a whole different thing back then. I mean, I remember introducing Kansas to a whole bunch of people that had never heard of the band. They weren't that popular at the time, but I mentioned it to both people. So that's basically how it worked. You heard a group from somebody else, or there was a record store in New Rochelle that me and a friend used to go to, and he would play new stuff from different groups that we'd never heard of. That was music discovery back in the 70s.
What record store was that in New Rochelle?
I don't remember the name of the music store in New Rochelle. I don't remember the name of it. It might have been by the mall there. It might have been.
Okay. I see. And what about you? Before you started playing, did you go to any shows, any concerts or anything?
Oh yeah. I went to many concerts. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What are some of the ones that stick out to you from that period?
Oh, I did just so many. None in particular. Just quite a few.
Okay. Were there any? I know that you all played in Co-op City, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But were there any concerts that you went to at Co-op City before you all played outside?
You mean concerts in Co-op City?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a couple. I think there were. Yeah, I think there were a few concerts. I mean, the most memorable ones, the ones that we actually appeared in.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there were a few. I don't really remember them too well, but there were a few that we had gone to. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
The only concert I remember in the Bronx was in Pelham Bay when the Zebra played. Because I was there. We actually played in Pelham Bay Park too. There was some kind of it was a summer thing. We played by the playground. That's when that other guy was singing.
I imagine that you all, probably all of you all were too young for this, but I know Black Sabbath played in, what is it called, Gay Lake Stadium or whatever, it's Manhattan College.
Oh, yeah. I was 72,
71 or 72, right? Yeah. And I think Deep Purple might have too.
Yeah.
The first Sabbath album I heard, actually Warren turned me on to Sabbath. We didn't even know what it was. It was Paranoid. The album Paranoid. But I looked at the cover. He still had it in shrink wrap. I think he said Sid gave it to him. And,
wow.
I was like,
well, her boyfriend gave it to me for my 10th birthday.
Yeah. Well, how old were you?
I was 10. Her boyfriend gave it to me for my birthday.
Wow.
Some album to give a 10-year-old. Yeah, what did you listen to when you're 17? That's when you opened it up. You're 17. We were at my house. I remember that. I put it on there. We heard War Pigs, and that was it. We were hooked. You're like, oh, shit, how can we play like this?
I mean, that song is still. Yeah, wow. All right, so we'll go with Mike, and then we'll get to you, Warren, and then we'll cycle back around to the next kind of phase of development. So Mike, do you want to talk about your family history and background, your early years getting into music, all of that?
Yeah, it's all of the
light a cigarette,
art
it's gonna take a
people.
while.
All the art people were on my mother's side. I didn't figure that out until many years later. You know, all the actors, all the actresses, all the models, all the musicians, songwriters, and so forth, all of them were on the other side. On my dad's side, which is all German and Irish, mostly, you know, they just didn't have that kind of imagination, you know, just and yeah, the whole idea of show business was, I remember my dad saying, where do you get these ideas from? You know, and I wondered myself, you know, and when I was going to a funeral of my mom's side of the family, I got it. You know, my great granddaunt actually, she explained it to me. She said, the arts flow through this family. Well, now I get it. You know, but I have to make. I'm the only gay member of Cold Sweat. So I have to make two gay jokes that will have to do with rock and roll. One was.
You mean you're happy guy? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a really happy guy.
The happiest.
There was an album. We talked about it before. The first really important rock album to me, and there were lots of them, but there was the one that actually made me want to slam my hands on the floor like a crazy person, was Have Twangy Guitar Will Travel by Duane Eddy and the Rebels. And I could not get enough of that album. What do you think my favorite song on the album turns out to be Ramrod. Yeah.
How
way ahead of my time.
That's funny.
I'm going to jump a few decades to when I was being a professional drummer. I was a power hitter, and which means you don't use your ankles for the the hi-hat pedal or the bass pedal on the bass drum.
Sure.
And you use the medium style, like 747 style sticks, and you play with the back end of the stick. So the whole kit shape.
Yeah, Mike, you
when you're
played like a
playing.
driver, man. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I used to, and it was Keith that actually gave me. Keith, you were the one that gave me the title of the world's loudest drummer, and I became known as that.
Yeah.
and
I was known as the world's
Keith
loudest guitarist. You know, I could play through the Chinese amp. You know, like that's got to be Keith. You know.
So it's amazing that Cold Sweat let me get away with the kind of crap that I got away with. But there was a group called the Brats. Okay, if you remember them, they were getting back together again, and I was doing a tryout for them years later, and I went through my paces with them. I slammed the living crap out of the drums, and the lead guitarist said after I was done, he said, "Man, you play with balls." And I said, "You have no idea." It's like I was the only one who got the joke. But I thought it was funny. It goes back to the Beatles, and then like the Beatles were going to play Shea Stadium. This is back in '66, I think. No, 65. And we heard they were coming to town, and they were going to be playing Shea Stadium. So my sister and I, we were huge Beatle heads in the early mid '60s. We begged our dad to take us to this concert, but he thought it was mad to have a concert in a baseball stadium. Nobody does that. Why don't they just pick a theater like everybody else? And he just thought it was absolutely mad to do this. Nobody had done this before. No, we're not going. But that was my closest chance of getting to see the Beatles in concert back in those days. I saw them in bits and pieces later on, but that's quite the same.
Sure.
And but yeah, I got yeah.
And when did you? I mean, you were playing drums with, your own instrument, your own makeshift, items when you were a child, obviously. But when did you actually get a kit and start playing a kit and all of that?
I started getting into I fell in love with my mom turned me onto the Ventures. Now I'd already been aware of the Ventures and even aware of their drummer. I just remember seeing the Monster Mash album came out, and I thought, for a novelty record, the drums are awfully good, Yeah. And the better than they have to be. And it turns out he was the guy who wound up joining the Ventures and being their drummer. I didn't know this back then. It wasn't until like 1968 when Mom turned me on to them and their new sound with an album called The Horse. And I fell in love with I ripped off so much of him and Ringo, of course. You got to copy certain things from Ringo, obviously. And Matt Benton, one of the earliest drummers for Sonny and Cher. I was huge on Sonny and Cher, but I realized they had two different audiences. They had their TV audience, which is like middle of the road stuff, and they had the people who bought their records and went to their concerts, mostly hard rock. High production, but hard rock. I think that's why it was just high production. Everything had to be huge. It just had to be huge. Horn and strings with a good, solid rhythm section. And those were generally the jobs that I got as a drummer.
I see. And you were already playing in a band, I think, in the early 70s, right? Was it Evil Eyes?
Yeah, it was with the Evil Eyes in the early 70s.
Was that your first band?
With the Kids. No, I was with the Kids in '68. Talking about like what Keith was doing, playing tennis rackets. I had something called. I had a wooden board, like a 2x4 with a couple of different sized rocks, and I used to bang out rhythms on that. And we called it a clacking board for some reason. And I was pretty good, because I didn't have a kit until the 70s, but back in the 60s, that's what we were doing, and we were, that I got turned on to a lot of stuff that a lot of records that other kids were bringing over, and I started learning more and more stuff, and I got better, and eventually I got my own kit in the 70s, and I became an amalgam of my favorite drummers, okay, but mostly hard hitters, and I even hit harder than they did. I still have, Mel Taylor was huge, and of course I was a huge Elvis fan, and Elvis didn't really form until as a supergroup until '69. So, but I got on the train pretty early, and I liked Ron Todd a lot, and I ripped off Ron Todd ridiculously. I ripped off all the drummers that I really liked.
Sure. And as far as getting into, I guess harder rock, heavier music, what are some of the, first hard rock albums or bands that really caught your attention?
Well, like I said, I liked hard rock groups that had production, big production.
Yes.
So I liked Earth, Wind and Fire. I liked Sonny and Cher. Stuff that people would not consider to be. And I was huge on the Beach Boys just because they were just amazing musicians as well as. They were great instrumentalists as well as singers, and I liked harmonies, big harmonies. So you combine all those things together. It's funny, in later years, toward the end of my drumming career, it kind of blended into two camps. You were either part of a jam band or a song-related band, but you couldn't be both. And I thought that was strange because it was natural to be both. You could be a great musician and play great songs.
Absolutely. All right, so Warren, first of all, you missed the very, very beginning introduction. So if you want to just say your name and the position in the band, and then we'll take it back to your family history and background.
Okay, well, Warren Kitt. I am the bass player. Was the bass player. I'm the first bass player. Let's see. I got together with these guys. I was probably about 17. They're the first band I ever joined. The first band that asked me to join. And it was all. I admired them for being musicians, and they needed a bass player, and I was available. So,
Great. Well, why don't you say a little bit about your family history and background, and how they ended up in the Bronx, whatever you know about that.
Well, my folks were from Charleston, South Carolina. They came up to New York City in the, I would say, probably early 40s.
Sure.
I'm the youngest of four. I was born in 62. By that time, I'm way younger than my siblings. They were 15 and then 14, and 10 at the time of my birth. So not a lot of time amongst them. They were typical teenagers. And infants and toddlers are not the first choice of people to hang out with. So
that's right.
That's true.
Where did you live during the first part of your life? Because I imagine you moved to Co-op City with your family, but before that.
Well, I lived in Harlem till I was 12. My mom and I moved to Co-op City when I was 12. That was back in '74.
Okay, yeah.
And we met through friends of friends, as people do. And I'm pretty sure the first person I met was Keith. And
Great Gildersleeves introduced us. Remember?
That's right. That's how we met. Exactly.
I remember. I always came over with my guitar. You fell in love with that guitar, my acoustic guitar, the Honer.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Yeah, you remember I even said to you, get a bass, man. We'll put a band together. Next thing you know, you show me your receipt for a Red Rickenbacker. I'm like, holy crap, man.
Wow. Wow.
I remember that. You kept the receipt on the back of your door until you finally got it.
And
wow.
I'll be perfectly honest with you. As much as I love music all throughout my childhood, becoming a musician never occurred to me until anyone actually suggested it. And,
sure.
Yeah. And the instrument that was suggested was bass. So I figured, well, yeah, sure, why not? I was gonna my favorite instrument is piano.
Where would you be without me?
Warren, what kind of music were you into before you took up bass? What are some of the albums that you remember from that period? The music that you're drawn to.
Well, pretty much everything. My folks, they listen to all the all-time classic stuff that everyone's folks listen to. Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Duke Ellington, all those older, all that older generation stuff. My folks were all into that, and I heard it, and I guess I dug it as much as any little kid could,
Yeah, sure.
But For me, getting into music was, I guess you could say it was in two phases. First, my grandma gave me a brand new stereo for my birthday, and I tuned the radio to. I live in New York City, and I tuned it to WPIX, which at the time was the top 40 station, and that was pretty much my top 40.
The good guys.
Was my thing. Yeah.
The good guys.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like we mentioned before, when I was 10 years old, my sister's boyfriend gave me a Black Sabbath album for my birthday, so that's part of my, that definitely had an influence.
Absolutely.
And in high school, I was introduced to pretty much the whole gamut, Zeppelin, Floyd. I mean, everybody had heard the Stones all along, and the Beatles.
Sure.
But getting into high school, that's where everything really branched out. Particularly the Who. I I'd never gotten really heavily into them before, but once I was in high school, and like I said, I got into pretty much, everybody you can think of. I'd always, everybody always dug the Beatles, and as far as bass playing, when I was learning to play bass, when I was starting about 15, I thought Paul McCartney was pretty much untouchable. There are bass players, and then there's Paul McCartney. And it all branched out from there, and I heard pretty much everybody. And like I said, Cold Sweat was the first band they asked me to join, and it was through them that that everything started getting heavier, because they were all into the heavier stuff, and that was how I got into all the heavier stuff.
I see. And Warren, what high school did you go to, or as Russ put it, show up to occasionally? That's a good way.
Well, to paraphrase Russ, Bronx Science, I passed the entrance exam. I was enrolled there, but I never actually went.
Holy crap.
Wow, that's funny.
Yeah.
And what about junior high? Did you go to 135 also, or did you go to maybe the junior high? Oh, I guess you might have been in Harlem for part of it, right?
By the time for junior high, I was already in Co-op City for junior high.
Oh, you're already in Co-op City. Okay.
It was the school I went to was called IS 180.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember Dr. Daniel Hale Williams School in the which was near Truman, which is right in that block of schools containing Truman High School.
I went to school on the opposite side of that, 181. That's my
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that,
Remember the basketball courts. If you're from 181, you couldn't go to the basketball courts in 180. Yeah, what are you doing here, man? Play ball. Not here, man. Go back to your own.
So Warren, did your family live in Section 1 also of Co-op City?
We were in Section 5.
You're in Section 5. Okay.
Yeah, which is separated from the rest of the from all the rest of the buildings.
Yeah, both Warren and I were from Section 5.
I see.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I see. Okay, so we've done one pass through, and I'm sure there's much more we could add even with that.
We can go off the date.
Hey, no, that's good. But let's talk a little bit about Cold Sweat coming into being, because I know there's a couple of precursors to Cold Sweat even. Can
I read some of that? It's in the Cold Sweat story. It's right here.
Read that.
I wrote this back in, like I said, in 2004. This is before I had the big hit series and all the others. After that, I couldn't even go down the street without people. Stop calling me Drone Bear. Even the name of Zangief eclipsed even that. I got, it was a huge series.
That web series was hilarious, though, man.
Oh yeah, to this day, I loved every day on the set. I really did. I loved it. Was one of my favorite all-time jobs. And but anyway, so this is the Cold Sweat story from the 22nd of June, 2004, and this is how it goes.
It wasn't long after the demise of the aptly named highly dysfunctional band Social Disorder that three of its alumni went on to form Cold Sweat on or about June 9th, 1981. The date is significant with regard to its musical path that they chose because by blending the raucous ragged edge of punk with the slick craftsmanship and instrumental chops of heavy metal, Cold Sweat carved out a lonely niche for themselves, staking claim to some relatively uncharted musical territory, which defied slot marketing of the group in any then-existing target genre. Of course, 10 years later, their sound would finally be embraced by way of the grunge movement out of Seattle, Washington, 2 years after these visionary Bronx boys had called it quit as a group. I should point out also that this is from June 24th, 2004. All right? So that's when this was made. They certainly wasted no time in making their presence known, premiering at the Rising Sun in Yonkers, the scene of their last crime as Social Disorder, then moving on to Great Gildersleeves and CBGB's in New York City. Following these would be numerous and frequent concert appearances throughout the northeastern United States. During this early period, the lineup consisted of the adventurous guitar virtuoso Haase, who provided their classic hooky riffs, chord progressions, and polymelodic arrangements. Singer Rich Casale, responsible for most of their melodies and lyrics, which he executed by way of his guttural, ready-for-a-barroom brawl, lead-witted voice. Warren Kitt, the lively and unrestrained bassist, who floated in and out of the group about as often as his bass figures did in relation to their starting octave points. And keyboard impresario Russ Mate, who usually got relegated to the drums for many of their early performances and recordings, simply because they still had no drummer, and Russ had workmanlike facility with that instrument. Instrumentally, it was primarily he and Keith who determined the stylistic direction that would set them apart from both their punk and metal contemporaries. 1982 saw the band become tighter as a unit, evidenced by such recordings as the hilariously titled I Was a Teenage Mel Bay. This, in spite of the fact that from about this period onward, they would go through anywhere from 8 to 12 bassists and 4 lead vocalists. Rich Casale, however, would helm the mic long enough to deliver their first 45 for Power Voltage Records, a label created by Russ along with its publishing arm, Power Voltage Music BMI. The still impressive Chain Your Mind in 1984 with Hide and Seek as its flip side. During this time, according to the band, Rich had adopted a new falsetto technique that he planned to make full, some would say excessive, use of. Reportedly, a particular benchmark of achievement for which he'd aimed in this personal arena was to be able to hit notes that would make him sound like Ann Wilson of Heart. Anyone who ever heard Rich's deep, gutsy, growling, and distinctively masculine voice might have experienced great difficulty in believing he could actually pull it off. Reports from his bandmates, however, would have mercifully unburdened any of those people of such belief. Word has it that these falsetto attempts resulted in his screeching like a cat to the point of distraction during rehearsals. According to one bandmate, they begged him to give up this technique, but Rich was adamant about incorporating it into their sound. Presumably, the band had had enough and set about finding another singer while struggling with the notion of firing Casale. Nobody wanted the responsibility, so they elected Russ to do it. When Russ refused, the group reportedly begged him to do it, with Warren promising to kiss his feet if he did. Cold Sweat legend has it that Russ invited Rich to his home and brought him onto the balcony to break the bad news to him. Shocked and incredulous, Rich allegedly seized Russ in a bear hug and began to hoist him over the wall of the balcony 30 stories above the ground. The story goes that Russ got free, grabbed a couple of steak knives from the kitchen, and admonished Sal to leave, which he did. Following this episode were the tenures of lead singers J.C. Demon and Louis Giannone, of the latter of whom was featured on She's Got What I Need and the flip side, Razor Sharp. Despite the steadfastness of the group to survive personnel changes and rotations, being 10 years ahead of a popular trend is the kiss of death for most entertainers in such a position. Nevertheless, they did receive airplay, and She's Got What I Need entered rotation on at least one local station by about 1987. It should be pointed out that some of their early singles were recorded at Power Play Studios, which would later achieve notoriety as one of the most fertile recording grounds for rap and hip-hop in America, likely due to its decidedly low-tech facilities. All of this could not help Cold Sweat get a solid foothold in the recording industry, especially during an era when major conglomerates were the determining factor in what the public would ever hear. There would be other setbacks. One private investor who was to back their next single with radio promotion at the ready backed out just before an important contract meeting. On another occasion, the owner of Elektra Records canceled an exclusive showcase featuring Cold Sweat when it was learned that Rich Casale, battling a host of personal and emotional crises, was in no condition at the time to perform. By 1988, it was indeed time for a change. On Saturday, September 10th, Cold Sweat assumed their final stylistic incarnation. Having just secured singer Jenny Amlin, they were informed by Russ in no uncertain terms that he would no longer be playing drums. He would now exclusively be the keyboardist for Cold Sweat on their records as well as in their live performances. Neon Fire drummer Mike Fass was called in to fill in at this rehearsal at the Place in Greenwich Village. Jenny was absent, as was Warren, who now supplied only occasional rhythm guitar and vocals now that Laura Manfredi was the resident bassist. Fass, who wasn't even aware that Russ played keys, was amazed by his excellence on the instrument. The group was happy enough with Mike that he was invited to join the band officially, which he gladly did. With this lineup, it became clear that Cold Sweat had entered a new musical phase, employing a much more commercial sound that showcased their polish and precision as musicians and as entertainers. Even their appearance now smacked of professionalism. This would be most evident on stage. On Sunday, December 18, 1988, a rebuilt and souped-up Cold Sweat debuted at CBGB's and reinvented themselves before an audience by whom they could do no wrong. The show was an absolute smash, highlighted by their performance of Hold On. This number, with Jenny's spirited vocals and the apocalyptic crossfire of Keith and Russ's mutually unyielding simultaneous solos, was a crowd-pleasing showstopper. With new life breathed into them came a renewed interest in recording, and so a new album was planned. On Saturday, February 18, 1989, Cold Sweat entered Soundscape Studios to record Downtown Woman, Shoot Your Love, The Drain, and Hold On. On Saturday, March 4th, they recorded the rhythm tracks for their brand new song, Strangers, which featured Keith on guitar, Laura on bass, Russ on synthesizer, and Mike on conga. Then, on March 10th, Jenny Amlin returned to re-record her vocal tracks. She'd done the initial tracks during a bout with strep throat, and all of the tracks were mixed from 7 p.m. to 4 a.m. On April 1st, Cold Sweat became involved with EVIL Productions, who would supply equipment and transportation for all their upcoming concert appearances, as well as a rehearsal studio. Strangely, it was at this high point in Cold Sweat's resurgence that the group began to unravel. Tensions began to develop, fueled by Keith's assertion that Cold Sweat was hindered by the presence of keyboards because it colored their sound and obscured the guitar. Laura and Mike were in disagreement with Keith over this, and Russ's increasing dissatisfaction with the new style, which all but obliterated their punk metal sound and roots, contributed to the fraying of their musical union. Then, on Sunday, May 7th, Cold Sweat arrived for another concert at CBGB's, booked to follow the legendary club's hardcore matinee. Violence broke out several times and spilled out into the streets as the group had to make their way into the venue through the chain and broken bottle-wielding crowd. As for the remaining audience, a pall of palpably bad vibes hung ominously over the room. Then Cold Sweat hit the stage and something happened. The fear, anger, and apprehension of the crowd lifted, and soon they were grooving to the band. It was a killer performance, recorded live, and the audience embraced it. Even the live premiere of their new song, Strangers, came off beautifully and won the audience. Like their last triumph, they left the crowd wanting more, and the engineer gave them a heartfelt thanks for changing the whole vibe left over from the matinee disaster. Sadly, even this could not stave off the group's deterioration. Right after the show, an altercation developed between Tommy Doyle from Evil Productions and Cold Sweat. Harsh words were exchanged, which cast doubt on any continued association between the two entities. In the ensuing weeks, artistic differences within the band were out in the open and resulted in only a stalemate. On Saturday, May 27, 1989, they had one final activity as Cold Sweat, a rehearsal at Big Fun Studios minus Jenny Amlin. Then Cold Sweat was no more. To date, none of the February and March recordings have ever been released, nor has the final performance of Cold Sweat citing Mix's assertion that during the show, his keyboard module was losing battery power, which adversely affected his tuning control, thereby making the recording unfit for release. Even their last rehearsal was not recorded. 2 years after their dissolution, the punk metal sound that Cold Sweat established, whose uniqueness in the early 1980s was frowned upon by a vision-deficit music industry, would take the world by storm, but only as recreated by new and younger performers. Keith Haase would go on to form several bands, including Smack, Bloody Stoodling Anus, BSA, and Watt, WAAT, all of which attempted to recycle the chord progressions, guitar riffs, and structures that he provided for Cold Sweat's musical legacy and retool them into new songs that arguably lacked the breadth and scope of the same material as once performed by Cold Sweat. Today he heads Seventh Day, the notably high standard tribute to Black Sabbath, where his guitar-playing excellence continues to flourish. Russ Mate continues to compile his already multiple success stories, keeping Power Voltage Records alive, along with his publishing interests, Power Voltage Music, and its ASCAP counterpart, Digital Dawn Music, building the label's impressive roster, which continues to launch a formidable array of quality artists onto the world stage. And today he heads a successful multimedia web company. After his final years as a record producer and studio musician in the mid-1990s, he turned his attentions to the building and operation of his business ventures. Now he has returned to music, performing as composer, arranger, producer, and keyboardist behind the popular and critically acclaimed Just Offshore, conquering new musical vistas with his innovative vision. Laura Manfredi, despite her groundbreaking achievements as one of the finest, some would say the very best, female bassists in rock, involved herself in remarkably low-profile musical associations after her years behind such ambitious outfits as Neon Fire, Muttley's Rocket, and Joe's Friend. She retired from performing in the late 1990s, but her stamp of excellence continues to live on as her contributions to the world of recorded music still resurface and capture the interest of music fans worldwide. Warren Kitt spreads himself quite thin these days, having to limit his assignments as one of the most sought-after bassists in rock and appearing in concert, on records, on radio, and in music videos. Perhaps his most shining achievements came as a result of his involvement with the awesome and musically transcendent journeyman known as Shock Me Blue. Among his many current associations are Seventh Day, Doomed Airship, where he expresses his talent as an actor in addition to his role as singer and musician, at least 2 Jimi Hendrix tribute acts, and he remains one of the most reliable pillars in the musical foundation of the durable and high-energy rock adventure Muttley's Rocket. In 1998, after 20 years as one of the founding members of Neon Fire, Mike Fass went on to form his own group with Warren Kitt called Doomed Airship. His is one of the strangest careers in show business. A former stand-up comic, Mike became a comic character actor on stage and television, typecast mainly as a rogue gallery of colorful bad guys. But it was as a frontman for Neon Fire, and now with the Airship, where he found the most satisfaction. He recently found his greatest fame as one of the most popular nude models among the bear community. As drummer bear, Mike has established an impressive international fan base, and as of his writing, makes the bulk of his living as a power drummer to some of the biggest stars in rock. All of these players have reunited completely and variously over the years in groups such as Neon Fire, Doomed Airship, Muttley's Rocket, Mate, and Joe's Friend, and all remain friends today. A much-changed and battle-weary Rich Casale recently resurfaced to make a friendly and optimistic overture to Russ Mate and expressed a desire to reunite Cold Sweat. Russ Mate has been intermittently entertaining the idea. Warren Kitt is receptive to it, but remains doubtful of its chances, and Mike Fass is very enthusiastic about doing it. As 2006, the group's 25th anniversary, looms ever nearer, public and media interest in Cold Sweat has grown, further renewed by the recent re-releases of some of their early material by HypedToDeath.com and subsequently by Power Voltage Records. With all these seeming planetary alignments conspiring within their constellation, can the return of Cold Sweat be far behind? So yeah, that's it. And I should point out that we had, well, I've since gone on to a major, a major hit series that was worldwide. That was pretty amazing. And but yeah, I've suffered a stroke in the meantime. I'm writing a new book. I've got a new book coming out called I Am the Red Cyclone, about my years in the role of Zangief. But also, rather than just stumble out onto a stage with a book in hand, I'm going to perform again. I got to learn to sing all over again and do all that stuff. And I intend to perform live and sing first, and then after a commercial break, go on and bring the book with me. I have to bring a physical book with me, even though most of the fans will be young enough to be actually, getting the online version of the book. I have to have a physical book, obviously, to present. Anyway, that's my story.
Great. Thank you so much. And I know that Russ wants to say more about the Cold Sweat website and, a lot more about that. And before we do that, though, since Mike just kind of gave a little bit of an update, after that piece was written as far as what he was up to, let's hear from the rest of you kind of in turn, further updates to your musical journey, post-2004 when that piece was written. Maybe we'll do, I guess, Keith, Warren, and then Russ. And then Russ, after you finish, you can give the plugs about Cold Sweat you want to give. Okay. Keith, why don't you update us as far as where your musical journey's taken you since 2004?
In 2004, well, actually, at that time, I was doing Seventh Day with Warren and this friend of mine. Well, we found him through an ad, Tony Fuentes. He played drums. Wasn't best, but he was very enthusiastic. But we started that. When was that, Warren? 2000, 2001?
That sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 2001. Yeah, I was living in Staten Island at the time. And we had a pretty good run. We had a guy managing us. I can't remember his name. Yeah. A very annoying guy, too. I couldn't stand him. But it's always the case. Yes, it's always the case. Ed Wood, that's his name, Ed Wood. Ed Wood, yeah. It seems like everybody knows who he is, and they all have the same opinion of him also. It's real annoying, but good things done. Yeah. He got us into a cannery and other places around the city. And pretty much just through that time, and after, when I got to about 2006, I had a stroke in March, just before our gig at Pussycat Lounge on the 28th of March. And I was also working with a cover band called Flashback. I was on and off for them, but they were getting paid gigs. So I said, hey, what the hell? Yeah. I never told you, Warren, about it until recently. I said, besides, I don't know what Tony would have to say about it, but I just, whatever.
Well, that's what
it was all here and there anyway. I mean, the best place to play this time I ever had with them, or the best gig I should say, was out in Long Island. Now, One Talk movies. We actually made $1,400 the way they did. I got $600 out of it.
That is very cool.
And a place to stay, a place to stay for the weekend, and we had our own house too. We were the daytime band.
Nice.
They did everything from God knows what. You name a song, they probably did it too. The bass player who played actually was Solar Circus. I can't remember his name. I remember the drummer who picked me up in San Juan, Frank. He had a band, so I said, I'll come and get you. You guys bring your amps, just bring your guitars. You the other guys get amplifiers or something. All right. Anyway, but after this stroke, I had, like Mike is doing, had to revamp myself, get myself back in coordination. And I had been, actually in 2007, I started a home studio. I started playing keyboards. And I was doing everything on hard disk drives. And so I met a DJ down the hall in my building. And he said, what are you wasting your time with things? They're hard, they're heavy and bulky. Try a DAW system, digital audio workstation. So he turned me on to one. I was like, this is pretty simple. It's a lot easier than, scratching out the desk. Everything went onto flash drives or SD cards or wherever you had to put them.
I should point out that Kitt is doing some amazing music.
Yeah, I haven't written a song since 2012. You get a dead spot. The hell of a dead spot for me, man. But I did start doing recordings after the guy who turned me on to everything with the DAW systems. He died unexpectedly of a massive heart attack, and I got most of his customers. It was all hip hop and rap. I was like, I don't know what to do with this. They all telling me, how to do drum beats. I said, you feel like rock beats, that's fine with me. I don't know what to do with you guys. So I showed them how to use a drum machine, and they got around. And then I did that all the way up to about 2018. And then in 2019, I went down to Florida. And I was, I still mess around for myself. I still have all the equipment I had, but in the little room I'm in right now, I can't possibly have 5 people in here. That'll be a crowd, a very big crowd. That's how small the room is. And that's about it, really. I've gotten better playing on the keyboard. I do it all with one hand, so it is difficult. But I do it all with the guitar structured chords that I know on guitar. That's all I know, guitarist.
Amazing.
And I also found a way to make one keyboard where I had it sounds like a heavy distorted guitarist. And somehow I'll release some of the songs. There's one song I dedicated to the guy. His name is Vinny. Can't remember his last name. It was Italian, but he went by the tag of Outlaw. Everybody called him Vinny Ray. Nicest guy in the world. He smoked more. Yeah, he smoked like a chimney though, and I don't need cigarettes, man. This guy, he walked into his house, he got high. And he walked into his house, he got high. No, I don't know how to smoke, man. I just breathe the air, And, well, he's finished off one split. He's rolling up 2 more. So I'm like, and this guy had vinyl. He had more vinyl than any record store I've ever been in. He even had stuff I couldn't believe in. He actually had. I was like, he had Spider-Man records. I said, what the hell are you doing with
He had amazing stuff. He had a record from Daddy Drew Drop Down called Chickaboom. I was like, I can't believe you have this.
Wow.
I've had most of the records.
And it seems Mike and his friend Charles, they knew him. They went down to Florida around the same time he was for that. What was that, Mike? There's some kind of it was some kind of dance music you guys are doing down in Florida. But
Yeah, that was a completely different project.
It was in the early 80s. It was the earlier time. It was about 85, 84. Yeah.
Somewhere about that time.
Yeah, and from there, just with my own experience with music. I mean, for me, music, it's all the same thing. The same 7 notes, 8 octaves, sharp and flat variables. You know, and the keyboard actually, and even Russell told me this, it's all laid out there in front of you. You don't have to worry about anything. And the guitars, everything's all switched on to two octaves, and it can get difficult and kind of wreck your fingertips too. I've been through that. Yeah, if you want a picture, just find a picture of Joe Satriani's fingertips after a show. It looks like they've been in a war zone. Or dipped them in acid. I swear to God. He used a super glue to keep it all in. I'm like, man, I was like, man, this guy's wasting his time. But, you know, whatever makes it power, you know. But other than that, I'm just down here just doing stuff for myself. You know, I love the business back in New York. You know, although from 2007 until 2018, I did make a good amount of money with it. Even though it was all hip hop and rap, and it was driving me nuts.
Sure.
I mean, I can take rap. It's like Rage Against the Machine, because that's kind of rapish, and they kind of mix up rock and rap. That I can deal with, but the straight up like you know, if it's like R&D, Run DMC, there were a lot of guys doing that. I had one band though, that was a 3-piece jazz band. Once in a while, they have an extra horn. And there was just a guy with a double bass, a 3-piece drum kit, and the girl sang. And I was like, yeah, great, no problem. And nobody even knew that they were in there. How quietly they played. So, anyhow.
Wow. Keith, where was the recording studio?
It was in my house, in my apartment.
Yeah. Was that when you were living in?
I was in Staten Island, St. Joy. Yeah, I was in St. Joy, right across the street from the Yankee Stadium.
I have photographs of some of your sessions. Yeah, I have photographs.
Yeah, wow. Me and Mike, we did a session with him. I forget what we were doing. He was trying to do. I was going to use him for drums on the song I wrote for him, but since he's a power player, he was killing the electronic. He was redlining everything on the electronic set. I said, you got to play lighter, man. You will be loud. It's not an acoustic set. It's not the same thing. But you know,
he tried to explain that to me, but you got over my head.
You know, it's like telling a kid, don't eat the cookies in the cookie jar. You know, but
exactly.
You know, yeah. So you know. But eventually I had a drum machine. I worked in a drum beat for it, and the extra pieces that I needed in the drum set and the drum part.
He was amazing.
You know, he was amazing. And I had a couple of the rough cuts that I kept. I have everything I recorded, but I did record one song for Mike. It was about 32 seconds long. It was an intro for one of the shows he was doing. It was for that show you played Thingafin. I forget the name of the show.
That was Street Fighter for later years.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I wrote that. I still have that. Yeah, I never did get any money for it, so the song's mine. You know, so I don't know what I'm going to do. It's kind of
they have their own composers. They have their own composers.
It's just a short little thing for intro and outros. During the show, but you know,
I didn't have that much power. I was just an actor.
Yeah, yes. That sounds like people. I'm just an actor. I don't know, man. and that's about it, really. You know, eventually, somehow, I might release this stuff I did back in 2012. It was from, I think, 12 to 15. I was doing up those songs like that, but the last song I really wrote was that song for Vinny, and he died about 2012 to 13.
Yeah.
Wow.
Miss that guy. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you.
He had a big reputation. Everybody knew who he was. This guy did everything. I seen him going out with his gear. Hey, you got a show? Yeah. I was like, I knew. All right. Oh. like I said, I can go on for days about this, but there are other people,
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, certainly, have gone on to do a lot since 2004 alone. So, Warren, what about you? Do you want to talk some about where your musical career is taking you post 2004?
Before Warren continues, because I have to do, Warren, Cold Sweat owes you a big thanks for something that you did at one of our shows. You were sitting. Warren was it
the CBCB show?
The audience, witnessing Cold Sweat with their new lead singer, and but Warren was the only one who noticed that because the bass pedal had one, like, half a fork. It actually come off. Only Warren noticed this, and he jumped onto the stage to fix it while I was performing, so I wouldn't have to stop playing the drums. He fixed it and jumped back off the stage again and saved the show. I got to thank Warren for that. Cold Sweat owes a lot to Warren for that.
Well, it needed to be done, so I did it. But let's see, since 2004, let's see, that was just about the time that the power trio that I got into in the early 90s, as Mike mentioned, they were called Shock Me Blue, and it was a pretty ambitious undertaking. And we were the other guys, the guitar player and the drummer, they were heavily inspired by artists like Mahavishnu Orchestra and Mothers of Invention, and it still had a very heavy sound, very driven, kind of sound. And
you guys were amazing because you took even a small venue and you didn't treat it like a small venue. We all felt like we were at Madison Square Garden.
Oh no, absolutely. That was our attitude. We didn't have many gigs, but wherever we played, we were playing like we were at the Garden. That was our rationale. And it's one of the bigger disappointments of my life because we practiced every day. Not every day, every week, every Tuesday, religiously for about 4 years. We never, in 4 years, all I ever did on Tuesdays was practice with this band. And people who know me will tell you, after a while, all rehearsing does is get you better at rehearsing. You really got to get out. You really got to get it and play in front of people. And like I said, that band, the disintegration of that band was one of the major disappointments of mine because I thought you were something. I'm not, if I, not to pat myself on the back too much, but we were something. And we rehearsed every week for 4 years and broke up after 4 gigs. And I'll be perfectly honest with you all. If I could have known when I was 15 that a thing like that could happen, I never would have been bothered learning to play bass. I probably would have been a plumber or something. But
wow.
After that, I've always been, like Mike said, I was in a Hendrix cover band since just about '88. In fact, I was rehearsing. What's the word? Auditioning for a Hendrix band, which is where I met Mike. And it was actually one of the not the first band I was in. The first band I was in, we formed in I joined them back in 1988, and I was with them for up until about I have to say about 3 years ago. I was. No, this is Angelo.
Oh, Angelo Stonefree. Oh, yeah, I remember that. The vice grip guy, man. Never shake hands with Angelo. He'd be like, stop.
yeah, the vice grip handshake, yeah.
Vice Grip Angelo, that's what I call him. But excellent guitar player. Played Hendrix to the T, man.
Oh, absolutely. He nailed it. He absolutely
what
nailed it.
dedication he had. He even sang it with strep throat one time. Holy crap.
Yeah. Let's see. Since then, I mean, I'm always being asked by somebody to come and play bass, and if I have time, I'll say yes. And Mike's not kidding when he says I spread myself kind of thin. It's kind of it's like
he's even coming back for Neon Fire's 50th anniversary, so he's actually going to be.
It's like I better accept the invitation because one day I'm going to get an invitation that's going to be the last. So I better not turn down too many. So yeah, I've been in a bunch of bands covering different stuff. My current band, one of my current bands, I should say, they're called Control Z, based in the Bronx, and we play mostly around Westchester, and we do I say classic rock, but it's mostly 90s stuff. And one of my other steady bands we're called Moving Pictures. We do a tribute to Rush. And that goes, it goes well. We tend to be pretty well received, considering it's not the easiest stuff to play, but probably people appreciate the effort. So that's something to feel pretty good about.
Absolutely, Warren. So, Russ, why don't you go ahead and update us, since the piece was written. So, I guess 2004, post-2004. And then you can also get into the plugs you want to make for Cold Sweat as well.
Okay. Well, after Cold Sweat, I played with Motley's Rocket, and Keith and Laura Manfredi also joined me in that band. We played around the tri-state area and recorded a couple of demos. Interesting about that band is a well-known manager wanted to manage us, and that never happened. That was Herb Gart. And you could Google Herb Gart and find out all about him, but that just never happened. Anyway, moving along. After Motley's Rocket, we played around the tri-state area, and we did record a few demos. After Motörhead's Rocket, Warren and I founded the Deep Purple tribute band Machine Head, and I played keyboards for that band. Warren played bass and vocals, and that band became quite popular. We played around the tri-state area and also a number of shows in New England. After that, I did my first solo project that I named Mate. Not sure, maybe that was around 1991, 92 maybe. No, maybe it was in 93, I think, 93, yeah. 93, 94. And after that, I started my second solo project named Just Offshore. I recorded my first album as Just Offshore in 2004, and most of the tracks from that album were featured as the soundtrack for the documentary film, The NYU Suicides, in 2005. Warren, Mike, and Keith. Warren, Mike, and Keith recorded a number of tracks with me in Miami between 2004 and 2005, and these tracks ended up in the Just Offshore album Caretaker for the Clueless. I've recorded 4 albums as Just Offshore, and a 5th album is being worked on now. I don't have a release date for it, though. And Just Offshore albums are available on Spotify. Okay, so almost...
It's on YouTube Music also.
Yeah, it is on YouTube also. Thanks, Keith.
Yeah.
Also, almost 43 years after the founding of Cold Sweat, the band has experienced a level of popularity that it never attained during the time that the band was active. Copies of the original 1984 45, featuring the classic Cold Sweat tracks Change Your Mind and Hide and Seek, have been sought by record collectors for years, with people paying hundreds of dollars for the original vinyl pressing if they can find one. Due to this, Cold Sweat is going to be releasing a vinyl reissue of Change Your Mind and Hide and Seek. The reissue will feature the original Cold Sweat lineup of Pete Haase, Warren Kitt, Richard Casale, and myself, Russ Mate. The reissue will be available on our website, which is located at coldsweat.rocks. That's COLSWEAT.ROCKS. Signed and regular copies of the reissue will be available for pre-order soon. There are also plans to release material from the period when Lou Giannone fronted the band, as well as when Jenny Amlin was the very last vocalist of Cold Sweat. We'll also be making Cold Sweat merchandise available on coldsweat.rocks very soon.
Nice.
Great. Thank you for that, Russ. Now, a question that we didn't even get to last time because the sound was, bugging out on us. I'm curious. This might be a very simple answer, or it might be, more complicated. But do you think there was anything specific to the Bronx that shaped the sound of Cold Sweat? I know, the sound evolved over time, of course, but is there anything kind of unique to the Bronx that went into shaping the sound of Cold Sweat? And, each of you, if you have an answer, can feel free to answer, but just curious to hear what your thoughts on that might be.
Oh, I'll say we lived in the Bronx. I mean, that's where we lived.
Me too. I don't think the Bronx gave anything to our sound, though. I mean, our sound was original in a way. Just right. I'd listen to people. I say, "That's a good sound. Let me try something like that." Or I hear a certain riff, and if I see someone playing it, I'll be like, "Hey, how'd you do that?" And show me how it goes. And that's basically, I'm not a trained musician. I just, just haphazardly. I didn't really.
You were still one of the best.
Bronx, still am, but I do it on keyboards. Yeah, that's a whole other world. I bang my head against the wall for that. But as far as like Russ said, we lived in the Bronx. That's about
right.
it.
Yeah, and you could just as well, turn that around and say we created that sound in the Bronx.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Although there is one thing we should mention, we did play a club down in Avenue A and 7th Street called A7. They were actually a very unique punk rock club. They're among all the other ones down there, Pyramid Club, Downtown Beirut, all those other ones, but they were the ones where we played with Black Flag. We didn't even know who they were until we were told who they were. Yeah, the show we did was It was us, Black Flag, Cold Sweat, Black Flag, and Mark Truth and the Liars. Love that name.
Wow.
That's a great name. Mark Truth and the Liars. Everybody liked Mark Truth because he always took his clothes off. At least
I
that's what I
played
heard.
that too with another artist.
Yeah. I mean, we played them many times that the people were, everything thinks, punks are a bunch of bastards. No, they're nice people, man. A little bit off the wall, but they're nice people overall.
That's right. Now, Mike or Warren, what do you all think of that question? If it's the same as basically what Keith and Russ said, that's fine, but just want to make sure you all have an opportunity to answer if it's different.
I came in later as a player, but I still own to this day all of Russ's records. I mean, I own them all. Ever since I've known him, and ever since he's been working for all these other amazing people, and of course the Cold Sweat stuff I could get my hands on later, But I got all that. And Warren?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, just a little bit distracted.
You were there at the beginning, so.
Oh, no, that's fine, Warren. Yeah, so I guess basically, is there anything specific that the Bronx shaped your sound in any way as far as Cold Sweat, or it could be other projects you've been in since Cold Sweat too?
I don't know if I'd say the Bronx specifically shaped my approach to music, or even really any of our approach to music. It's just we were, our influences were, our influences came from all over, from all over the country, and pretty much all not all over the world, but mostly American hard rock and British hard rock, So
Warren, wasn't it that day that we were hanging out, and then you said, "Hey, we're from the Bronx. Let's form a band." No, I'm just kidding.
Although Warren, I do remember back in the day when I came over with my acoustic one time. This is basically before I got my electric. I was playing acoustic since I was 13. And when I went to electric, it was a whole other world. I didn't understand. It was a different animal. And that's when I was 17. Anyway, I came over. Warren loved the guitar. He was always playing. And I said to him, "Hey, Warren, get a bass. We'll put a band together." And you just turned, you got 16, 17, I was about 17.
I didn't even own a bass yet.
No, yeah.
Wow.
And next thing you know, about 8 months later, he shows me a receipt for a Can Me Up a Red Rickenbacker. I'm like, good choice.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Dude, you got to get a Rick again. I know they're expensive, but you got to get another Rick. Because Ricks are like
right, because the great thing about a Ricky is that even on a transistor radio, you can hear all the bass figures. That's amazing.
And also, they're one of the first instruments. They were actually stereo. They had 2 inputs in there, one left and right.
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah. And I don't know if you ever hooked up your Rick stereo. I don't think they knew how to do it. Well, you?
I only ever had one amp, to play with. So.
That's true. Yeah. You got to have another amp to make a stereo. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, get a Rick.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Bronx, I don't think, also I just want to put this out there that I don't recall any instances of when we were playing in other areas or rehearsing in other areas where, being from the Bronx was a real plus. If anything, it might have been a little bit not, it definitely, it didn't, I don't think it really made that much of a difference one way or the other, really. But I think that, our playing and our creating music and forming it, like I said before, is something that we brought. And since we were from the Bronx, that's, kind of self-explanatory.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's not like there were any other bands playing that you knew of anyway, playing the kind of music that you were playing that were from the Bronx at the time, right?
And half the time,
there was no real
half the time we come up with songs. Half the time I'd be chopping out some riffs I'm just thinking, and either Rich or Russ would be like, "Hey, what's that?" And I said, "I don't know. Could it be a song? Well, let's see." And Teenage Obey came out like that. Teenage Obey, I don't know. I still think it should have been called Empty Tears. Happened that way too. I just started playing the riff, and I think
it's a great title.
That was actually what Teenage Obey. Yeah, if you're not a guitar player, you're not going to get it. I had the other leaning down the audience like Teenage Obey. What the hell's that? And actually, nobody was a decent guitar player. He just had a horrible way of showing you how to do it. I had 4 of his books of instruction. Most of them are barred chords. And then, you want to feel pain? Try doing a bar chord on the guitar. You get it right in the palm. If you're not used to it, you'll cramp up instantly. Trying to hold down 6 strings, 1 finger across the board, and the other 3 hold down the formation. Oh God!
After Keith's stroke, he did something outside of one of Russ's garden barbecues.
Oh yeah,
and
Russ's
barbecue. All you could do was use your left hand, but you were fingering the fretboard, and it sounded like a solo. It was amazing. It's like that's one hand he's doing that with.
Yeah, I mean the guy that can play with 2 hands looks like an idiot. Yeah. And it was his guitar too. I'm sorry,
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's interesting because I think Cold Sweat, and there's a couple other either musicians or bands from the Bronx, but of course since there wasn't a scene as you mentioned, it's not like any of you would have really even known each other. But Paris Mayhew from the Cro-Mags kind of dwelt at the metal punk.
I heard it. Cro-Mags.
Yeah, kind of, in that spot between, and then
Yeah.
Yeah. And also there's a band called The Unjust.
I had a friend who heard Cold Sweat, and he compared it to Danzig. You know, after King Diamond came in, yeah. And then, so I would say, what do you mean, like Mother or Sinner, or not Sinner?
Mother. He did, Mother for sure.
Mother. And also, it's not Am I Evil? That's somebody else, but I Am Evil. And it had a riff in there, like, that sounds like one of your songs. I said, no, that's not me. That's Danzig. And Danzig were crazy, man. They actually cut themselves up on stage. I said, yeah, I'm not that into it, man, but, you know, all right. You know?
That's right. So
I thought I was dramatic.
Is there anything else that any of you all would like to add about Cold Sweat, you know, as a kind of way of closing?
It was great. I had a lot. Personally speaking, I had a lot of fun. I think it was interesting. It was great. You know, just you know, it was. You know, we didn't kind of get to where we wanted to be, ultimately. But it was still, we had fun at all the gigs and all the rehearsals, all the crazy stuff that went on. You know, that's just once in a lifetime kind of thing.
Yeah, we had a fan base. We had a fan base. I would say it was small, but you know, as Gene Simmons said, you know, if you don't have fans, you're nothing. It doesn't matter. You can be the best band in the world. You have no fans, you're nothing. Without fans,
in all my years as a drummer, I had more fun in that group. You guys let me get away with murder, and I did. I really did.
And Mike, to be honest, I didn't give a crap what you did as long as you kept the timing. You know, and that's what you did. You know? I remember when Laura first heard you, and she's like, "Oh, can we keep him?" You know?
Yeah, I know. It was like, I felt like a dog, you know.
Okay. And considering when I play guitar, it was just basically, but my amps go to 11 guitar. That's how loud I play. And Mike fit right in being a power drummer. He's the only drummer who actually did. I said, "Can you turn down? I can't hear myself." And that's a drummer. And you know you're a loud guitar player when the drummer's saying, "Can you turn down?" You know. That's one thing Mike never asked me to do.
I seem to recall the opposite. I remember asking you if you could turn up a little bit because I couldn't hear you as well right in the Kitt.
So many stories. I mean, there's not even enough time. If we went on for another 2 or 3 hours, there are still so many stories that we haven't even touched upon. Actually,
one of the greatest bands I've ever gotten a chance to work with, and I still love them to this day.
Warren?
Yeah,
what about you?
It was the very first band I was ever in, and it's incredibly fortunate that three of my such very good friends decided to put this thing together and to have me be part of it. As Mike had said, it's been a tremendous experience and one of my most favorite and cherished experiences.
Great. Well, really appreciate all of you taking the time, both the last session and this session, to share, as Russ said, really just a small portion of your story, because I know that there's a lot more history, a lot more kind of anecdotes and stories that could be told about Cold Sweat, but hopefully this is just another contribution in the documentation work that you all are already doing yourself, and really appreciate you sharing what you shared, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for putting this thing together. Thank you so much.